Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today's video is the summation of the NAMM report. It's going to be a little truncated compared to the last few times that I've done this where I have like a video per brand. I don't think that's really worth it this year because the NAMM show itself is so truncated. It's so much smaller than it used to be. It's not small, there's still plenty of stuff to look at, but it's not really worth me making a whole bunch of content about it. I will have some cool stuff coming up soon that we'll talk about in a moment in this video. So, first thing is a couple disclaimers. The NAMM show is not for consumers. It's not for people like you and I who play instruments and we just want to have like the coolest stuff. It is for the trade aspect of it. It is a trade show. So, like a music store will go to NAMM and they'll be like, ooh, you know what? We tried out this brand of instruments. And we looked at them and we're like, you know what? We could make a lot of money selling these. And so they do some business, shake some hands, stuff happens. It's not really for consumers, but that is a nice side effect. So that's why I go. I get to try a bunch of stuff. But I'm not going there and making big business deals like you should be doing. It's not a store. You don't go there to buy stuff necessarily. There are a lot of brands that were not there that have been in the past. Getz and Edwards, Schilke Reinho, Jupiter XO, Adams, Stomvy, and the smaller boutique American makers like M&W, Stevens Horns. I had another one in mind that I just totally forgot. There's a lot of those makers that don't come to this because it's not really their scene. They're not looking for like a lot of distribution or new markets or anything like that. They're just trying to make trombones as fast as they can. They don't really need this kind of exposure. They go to stuff like ITF. Bottoms up, by the way. So I'll be hitting the big points of the show rather than talking about every single little detail. If you want to know all the details about every single instrument, I put a link in the description to Tiffany's website. I was with Tiffany all day on Thursday, and we played a lot of the same stuff, and she also plays like all the high brass and stuff, and we'll have detailed typed out things of all these instruments. I'm going to talk about the big points about kind of each brand. Just happens to be in the order that I happen to see them. So first of all, Wilson was bought by Eastman, who also owns Shires, of course, and like Powell flutes and some other stuff we don't care about. Just got bought by Eastman, like I think they announced it like a month ago. And they had Wilsons at the show, which is pretty surprising for a company to move that quickly. I played a couple of the youths, and as per usual, they're good. I don't like them. They have just this little bit of like stuffiness, just a different blow than I would like. And I'm sure I could play one just fine if I were given it, but it's not what I would choose. And they are an endangered species. I don't really know how that's going to gel with like the Q series euphoniums and the Eastman tubas. Wilson makes tubas and euphoniums, so we'll see how that ends up. Shires, of course, same booth. As with every year, they have a lot of really good stuff, but I swear, and I have no real evidence for this, of course, that they just know how to cherry pick the horns that they bring so well, because they have all these instruments there, probably like 10-ish trombones, and like every single one of them, except one, per usual, is really, really good. And I swear they just go through the shop and they pick out like all the best stuff and they're like, oh yeah, let's take all this to the show. And that's really impressive. As with every year, the Q series are insanely good players. You can tell they're a little worse than the Shires that they're based on, but not that much. And from what I know with the real world, the Q series are not necessarily that good. Like, they're fine, but they don't present as well as they do at the shows in real life. So again, I can't like put any like real evidence towards this, but I swear they're just like the best people at cherry picking things to bring to the show. They had one of the best large tenors at the show, the new David Rajano Quintero model, which is very, very good. I liked it a lot. I didn't really think I would like it. And of course, the best bass trombones. The Coran model was very, very good. Eastman, of course, makes their own instruments. And most importantly, to me, they make some marching brass now. I did not know they were doing that. They have a Yamaha copy baritone. It's a copy. Good job. and a new marching euphonium that is not a copy of anything. They actually made their own marching euphonium, which is kind of a weird thing to do. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time. And like you're gonna sell some, but like, is it worth putting in all that effort? And it actually played great. It was light, it was easy to hold, it was balanced. The back bow is a little too close to the face, and the second valve slide was too long. So it was out of tune in a way that you can't just like, pull a slide or whatever. It was unplayably flat using second valve or one and two. So just a weird design misstep, but a strangely good horn by itself. Across the way from them, we had Besson, part of the Buffet Crampon group, and their lineup, again, like it was a few years ago, was backwards. The Prestige Euphonium, their top model, they had a gold-plated one, was actually a little bit worse than the Sovereign, the 968, 967, I can't remember the number it was. It's the lower end compensating euphonium, and that one was one of the best ones of the whole show. It was amazing. And the, like $13,000 Prestige and gold plate had nothing on it. It was not nearly as good. And that was the case a few years ago. I remember that exact same thing happening. Why can't I scroll? Okay, there we go. Courtois is also part of the Buffet Crampon group. And they had two amazing trombones, as they usually tend to do, with flaws that I can't get around. And it's not often that that's the thing I run into. Like some of the best horns of the whole show with one glaring issue that I wouldn't be able to deal with. The Pollard model bass was right up there with the Shires. Amazing, easy to play, really cool sound. Like semi ergonomic. Probably not my favorite, but more ergonomic than some. Good valves, good slide. But it had this just kind of like piggy quality to the low register, where it would have these kind of aggressive, a little bit harsher fronts to the notes, very kind of like modern American style, much like Pollard's playing can be, and you just couldn't turn it off. And for me, I would just not choose that. My monster bass, the Bach, does not do that. I can change the way that I start notes in the lower register, and the Pollard just was not having that, so I couldn't use it. Put it down. They also had the Weston Sprott model, the New Yorker tenor trombone. Amazing, probably the best tenor at the whole show. It played like a medium bore, but it was a large bore. Insanely easy to play. The best softs, the easy high range, easy low range. But because it has a screw bell, they moved the bell back towards the player by like an inch, and it's still front heavy. So the bell placement is weird with the slide, and it's still front heavy. So I'd have to put a counterweight on it, and the bell position would still be wrong. So again, just these weird like half missteps that make me go, I couldn't use this. And of course they're like 10 grand, so that's another miss. BAC was nearby on the floor. As per usual, they had some really, really good small tenor trombones. But as per usual, they kind of cheat, and those are literal artist models. Like BAC artists bring their trombones to the show and put them on the rack, and people try those trombones. So of course they're good. Real people play them in real life. They're not bringing just garbage. They're bringing good horns, and it seems like cheating. And the stuff that was not those artist models, they had like a new bass trombone and stuff, just wasn't that good. Didn't really do anything for me. It seemed well made, kind of, but just I don't know, the typical BAC thing. Like they make some stuff insanely well, and then just like totally give up on some other stuff. Let's see, Yamaha. I'll save the big surprise for last because I think it's the most fun. Yamaha was there. They've changed a bunch of their trombone designs. They've added screw bell models to the tenors and basses, and they're fine. I don't know. They've changed some things, but none of it is enough of a change for me to like go, oh, I would buy one of these over the other similarly priced instruments. That's just not the case. They had a new bass trombone, the 835, which is obviously just an iteration on the 830 Xeno. And honestly, it did not have the screw bell, by the way. It played just like a pretty good 830. The one that I use at work, or I have used in the past, is not a good example. But a good example is fine. It's okay. And the 835 they had, which is their brand new model, like a gold brass tuning slide and different levers and stuff, it just played like a nice 830. So I was not blown away. It just seemed kind of the same. And honestly, the 613H, the predecessor to the 830 that I sold recently, was about the same. So it feels like Yamaha's really kind of stagnated. They're trying to change and not managing to do so. They just kind of carry on. And honestly, my 613 no letter that I use at work now, I would choose over almost any of these Yamahas. So my like 30-year-old Yamaha is still a contender compared to all these new ones. Conn Selmer, or wait, I want to talk about Yamaha euphoniums. They had a 842 TS, which has the tuning slide trigger, and 642 2 Neo. They're both really good. Out of the two, I think I would probably have chosen the 642 Neo, which in the past would not have been the case. I really liked this one. It was one of the best euphoniums in the whole show. The 842 was also really good. Reminded me of my euphonium, but maybe just a little bit less free blowing. I don't know. I was really pleasantly surprised. Both horns were really, really good. Conn Selmer was there. And of course, like usual, just disappointing. They bring like four trombones, all large tenors, and they're just lame. There's the new 88H NV. It's fine. It just played like a Generation 2 88HO. And it cut like the Peter Steiner model was like fine, but not amazing. They had a new like Chinese model. They're kind of doing the Shires Q thing. I didn't play it because I just looked at it and I was like, what is this? No, I'm not playing that. So disappointing, like usual. They didn't even have bass trombones. Come on. And then the biggest surprise of the show for me, of course, play all the Chinese stuff because the Chinese makers are all trying to find distribution and trying to sell to music stores and stuff. And usually their horns are just like, not great. Lots of copies, lots of not very good copies, lots of trombones with nickel slides. Nickel slides are easier to draw than yellow brass tubes. And so a lot of times they just make nickel slides, even though the trombone might work better with something else. And so I played a lot of Chinese stuff. Some of it was interesting, some of it was pretty good. Played like a compensating euphonium that was one of the best ones at the show. Again, huge surprise. Played like a little non-compensating British baritone with four valves that I would love to buy. It was so fun to noodle on. Some stuff like that. But the biggest surprise for me was a new Chinese company called Y-Fort. Not the world's best brand name, but this is owned by a factory owner who has made all sorts of other trombones and stuff for like American makers and etc. for the last like 20 years. And finally was like, you know what? I think I could actually make my own trombones because I kind of know how they work now. And I have people on staff who can play and like we can design and iterate new things. And so they've released a large tenor trombone range, and I think also like trumpets and stuff. I don't play the trumpets, of course, but they had a whole large tenor trombone range, including top models that have a screw bell removable lead pipe, a model right below that with no screw bell but the same otherwise, a model that has no removable lead pipe but is mostly the same, and I think that's it. So kind of like three different ranges, and then like a student model and stuff. Don't worry about them. But these had an in-house designed rotor. This is not a copy of anything. I've never seen anything like it. It was so cool. They had nicely made bells, obviously kind of like 42 copy-ish. They had real slides, meaning they had yellow tubes, nickel crook, real oversleeves. They're not just the usual nickel slide that they toss on every trombone. And they were all good. So usually if you run into something like this at a show, you might try one horn and you'll be like, wow, this is amazing. And then you try like five others and you're like, ugh, these are not good. So they have one hero that happens to be put together and made with like the best quality stuff, maybe on accident. And the rest of them are kind of more representative of the real instruments, like the Conn Selmer booth, for instance. But every single one of these Y-Fort trombones, there were 6, were the same. They all played great. They all sounded good. They all felt good in the hand. They felt like professional instruments that were solid and well soldered together and all this stuff. It was mind blowing. And of course, they sell for pretty cheap because labor and parts and all that kind of stuff and shipping actually to the United States is very cheap for Chinese manufacturers, which is why they're used. And it's really, really encouraging for one of those Chinese companies to stand up and be like, wait, why don't we make our own horns that are not garbage and just sell them at like a lower price level? So that was really super encouraging. I actually have a friend who bought one, so I will have it on the channel soon. We have to steal it from her. I actually thought about buying one because they are cheap enough that I would, but of course my large tender project is coming like next week, so I do not need to buy yet another large tender and end up with like seven at the same time. And I will not own them myself, but really, really cool that a brand just decided to make their own horns. There was nothing on here that was just straight up, a Bach 42 BO copy or whatever like that. This was actually designed and made well. So that's very cool. More about that when I get one of those horns to try. So, in conclusion, kind of a smaller show, not a lot of basses, and most of the ones I tried, not amazing. BAC bass trombone, not good. Cannonball bass trombone, not bad. Not the worst horn I've ever played. The new Yamaha is fine. It was better than before. Shires were obviously top dog. The Curran model and the Q series, both of them, really, really, really good. A ton of large tender trombones. That's obviously a big seller. And at NAMM, they're trying to make sales to music stores and stuff. The top three, I'd say, were Courtois New Yorker. Easiest large tender I think I've ever played in my entire life without kind of giving up anything except for those things I talked about earlier with being front heavy and the bell being in the wrong position. The Shires Cantero model or Rahano model, I'm not sure what they're calling it. I really enjoyed it. It was really cool. And the Y Fort trombones were just under those really top dogs. They were very good, better than any of the Conn Selmer stuff, better than like several of the Shires. They were amazing. And youths, I don't think I played a single bad euphonium at the whole show. If you have like $12,000 and you want to buy euphonium, you have so many choices of good euphoniums. Like, what a useless instrument to be so good across all these different brands. I love euphonium, I really do, but like, we don't need this many great choices of good euphoniums. So that's the NAMM report. I know it's shorter. I know it's a little disappointing compared to usual. But I will have more about the Y Fort trombones. Tiffany got a yellow brass screw bell model with like a ding on it, and so got a discount. And I'm so excited to bring that home and try it out against like my box and stuff. And that's all I got for now. I'll see you all in an upcoming video. Bye bye.